Good afternoon. Welcome to Park Avenue Synagogue. Welcome to those who are joining us here in the sanctuary. Welcome to those who are joining us over the live stream. I want to thank you for joining us. Thank the Abraham Initiative's Interagency Task Force on Israeli-Arab Issues and Central Synagogue for partnering with us to make our program here this afternoon possible. I want to especially welcome our guests, our panel today, member of Knesset Ghaida Rinawie Zoabi, who is in September going to be heading to Shanghai to become the Israeli Consul General for Shanghai, the highest Israeli diplomatic post ever held by an Arab woman. Mazel tov, congratulations on that appointment. To Thabet Abu Ras, and to Amnon Sulitzeanu, who are the co-directors of Abraham Initiatives. It's an NGO striving to fulfill the promise of full and equal citizenship for Israel's Jewish and Arab citizens. You can see their full bios in the promotional materials for this event. This afternoon, our conversation is going to focus on relationships between Jewish and Arab citizens of Israel and on the ongoing efforts to build a shared society. Arab citizens comprise 21% of Israel's population, making this a relevant and meaningful topic regarding Israel's future for us to explore under any circumstances. Yet the last year, in fact, has been particularly historic in regard to those issues. With COVID-19, we saw Arab and Jewish medical professionals coming together on the front lines as the country fought a shared war against the pandemic. I read recently that there was a spike, but that spike has come down, I believe, in Israel, which is great news. And then in May of 2021, a little less than a year ago, clashes between Jewish and Arab citizens of Israel in mixed cities sent shockwaves throughout Israel and our own community. A very difficult scene to watch on so many levels. Only weeks later, Ra'am, the Islamic Party, became the first Arab party in Israel's history to be in a governing coalition, an incredibly historical moment. This new government has passed unprecedented budgets for socioeconomic development for Arab society. And of course, this past week, Israel experienced the worst wave of terrorist attacks in years, with Ramadan having just started and Passover around the corner. These topics are in the headlines again. I know that our speakers have lots of insights to bring to our conversation from their professional and from your personal experiences. So I want to dive right in. As I told you when we were schmoozing before, we are all invested in this conversation as American Jews, as Israeli Jews, as Israeli Arabs, and as I mentioned to you personally, as the father of an Israeli citizen, and God willing, one day, grandfather of Israeli grandchildren. These issues are very important, and I hold them close to my heart. So for the first 30 minutes or so, I'm going to ask some of my own questions, and we'll engage in some dialogue. There's some pre-submitted audience questions that we have, and then we'll have about 20 minutes for open Q&A. And if you're watching, and can people send in questions at this point, or have we locked down the... Okay, so we're good with questions, but those who are watching, if you have my email and you really want to ask a question, you can shoot me an email and I'll take a look at my phone in about a half hour. We have a lot of time. We'll keep our answers. I'm prompted here to encourage our speakers to keep your answers brief and to fit in as much as possible, but let's have a dialogue and not worry so much about length of answers. I'm going to begin with a pre-submitted audience question. Ghaida and Amnon, this is for you. This event is focused on the concept of a shared society. But what does that actually mean? Right? What does it mean when we talk about Israel as a shared country between Israelis, both of Jewish and of Arab persuasion? So what would it look like in kind of let's talk tachlis, right? Concrete practicalities on the ground. What does a shared society look like? Rita, why don't
maybe Amnon will start, and then I will
Great.
focus more on the politics.
So thank you for this question, which is not a simple one. But I'll begin by saying that for me, a shared society means a society in which both communities has a strong sense of belonging to the space, to the community, to the land, to the country, to the state. A sense of belonging requires equality, requires respect. And therefore, I would say that when we talk about shared society, we should always remember that, first of all, a shared society can exist between equal partners, stakeholders. And it's not enough to be equal, but also we need to work on the interaction, or if you will, the integration. So basically, we're talking about two main components. You know, we at the Abraham Initiative, we are stressing all the time that we are promoting equality, but at the same time, we are promoting the togetherness of the communities, because Israel is in fact a society in which Jews and Arabs are integrated and live side by side and interact in so many ways, in so many realms, actually everywhere. There are thousands and tens of thousands meeting points between Jews and Arabs. And in order to manage this situation, we need to make sure that those contact points are becoming places in which everyone feels comfortable and equal, and not a points where hostilities and alienation can take place. So it's very important. Israel is in a place where we need to make sure that in all of those contact points, Jews and Arabs feel welcome and at home and equal.
So Amnon, I want to let Rady, I want to give you an opportunity to answer that same question, but I want to make sure that in the course of this conversation that we talk about those meeting points, because I think for a lot of American Jews who travel to Israel, we don't often see that, right? We might go to one place of coexistence, or we'll visit an Arab school, but I don't feel like when American Jews travel to Israel, they're often sort of exposed to those meeting points. So I want to make sure that we circle back for all of us to talk about where those meeting points are actually happening, because I think that's for you to say that there are many points. I just want to make sure we collectively understand where that's happening.
So nowadays, it happens everywhere. You can imagine in universities and colleges, in hospitals, in corporates, in recreation facilities, in sports facilities, in the public sphere, even in NGOs. Actually, in government, almost any workplace and organization and realm in society that you can imagine, today, Jews and Arabs interact within it. So practically, we're talking about, yeah.
Right.
Well, for me, and I will try to answer this question from the perspective of politics, okay? Of course, I agree with the perspective of Amnon's, but I want to add an additional layer. Whereas, if you look at decision-making, politically speaking, in Israel, you can see that in the last 5, 6, 7 years, there has been a real shift and push forward for the Arab community in Israel to be part of these circles. And for me, what does it mean truly to be a shared society is for me to feel that I'm also, not only Amnon, but I'm also Balabait. Balabait, I think that all of us understand what does it mean.
A member of the community, a member of the house.
No. I'm owner.
Yeah.
Owner of the place. Not only Amnon, but also me. That means that if we, as an Arab community, we want to influence the agenda economically, socially, culturally, but also politically, we need to be part of the playground, and we have to be part of the game. What happened in the last 3 years, politically speaking, is that there were huge shifts also in the Arab politics, because for the first time ever, in 2018, the Arab Joint List, which is the largest political party at that time, publicly issued a press release that they are willing to support Gantz to be head of a government. This was a taboo that was broken. Another taboo that was broken was in 2021 when Ram, which is part of the Arab Joint List, split and they entered the coalition. As you said, that was a historic step. And the fact that we are now in a coalition, I'm part of a coalition that is a compound of 8 different, very different in ideology, from the real left to the real right, sitting together, Arabs and Jews sitting together, discussing every aspect, let alone, I'm not even talking about the geopolitical issues or the conflict issues or the occupations, much more easier things, such as welfare and health and how to reorganize and reshape the budget. This is an ongoing discussion that goes on all across the coalition. And for me, this is shared society.
Yeah, I think you raise a very important point that for so many American Jews or Americans looking at Israel, they see conflict, and what you're talking about is, yeah, that's out there, but at the same time, we want to be part of the conversation of setting budgets and et cetera, et cetera. That's really what we're talking about in the shared society, not to minimize those other issues.
Definitely.
Right? So real quick, because Thabet, I want to bring you into the conversation, but I'm just curious from your perspective, I know what it felt like to Reda for as watching this sort of play out a couple years ago with Ram, the historic ninja. How did it feel to you as an Israeli Arab, right, to be brought into the coalition of the?
Well, sometimes I feel that it's really hectic and difficult, but sometimes I feel that this is the only hope for any future discussion over real equality and shared society. You know, when I want to lead legislations on issues of health or education or municipalities or whatever, and I know that my best friend in the coalition happens to be Nir Orbach from Yemina political party. He's a settler. But I know that he will be willing to work with me and do the needed struggle inside the coalition to a specific goal that we share, to specific values that we share. It's difficult. It's difficult, but we're doing that.
It's called politics.
Yes.
Right? Thabet, I want to bring you into this conversation. I mentioned at the beginning that there have been many events in the last year that have shaped Arab-Jewish relations, and I'm curious, and Reda, you can comment on this as well. How do you think that the field of shared society has evolved over the last year? And to the extent that you can be a prophet, where do you think it's going?
Well, I'm not a prophet. I am an Israeli citizen watching what's going on, and I would like just to add to what my colleagues commented, that Israel as a country is becoming more mixed, okay? Over the years, especially in the last decade, we are witnessing Arab communities becoming stronger. Economically, they are working more, studying more, and they are moving around, mobilizing more. And so we see expansion of Arab middle class that moving to Jewish cities right now. We are talking about mixed cities, but also mixed region now. Israel is in the future, we will see a very mixed country, and I'm talking about 1967 border. This is Israel for me. And this situation is bringing to new challenges to the Israeli society, to Jews, to Arabs. Yes, we would like to see, for me, shared society and shared the future, actually. It's to see Arabs in every realm of Israeli society. It's so important, okay? We cannot imagine that, Arabs should contribute more to the Israeli GDP, for example. This is why they have to work more, to study more, and this is what really is happening. In the issue of socio-economic issues, I believe that the situation in last year, it's just progressed all the time. There is major developments, okay? Positive developments. You mentioned, Ghaida mentioned, the political partnership and legitimization of the Arab politics. This is something unprecedented in the history of Israel. Yet, you ask me where Israel is going, we have to pay attention to something negative development, which is the legitimization of the right wing, extreme right wing within Israeli society, that really all they care now, it's about incitement against the Arabs, and they are trying to topple the government. For us, they are trying to topple, to overthrow the Islamic party from the opposition, okay, from the coalition, okay? They try to topple and overthrow the cooperation between Jews and Arabs in politics. Yes, we really cheered the couple of years, the cooperation in hospitals, but we believe that it can be cooperation in the education system. In every realm, you can just think about it. I believe that this government, okay, I'm not a fan of Bennett, but when Bennett, the Prime Minister, is talking about one of three top agendas, one of the points of the three top agendas, combating crime and violence, this is something new for us, for the Arab community. We cheer that, we are cooperating with that, and I'm happy that the Abraham initiatives took part in pushing such an issue in the agenda. So I am optimistic, yet the new challenges, especially the racism within the Israeli society, is worrying us. We have to keep working together to try to think about share the future, and share the future between Jews and Arabs should consider always the issue of equality. Still, there are certain issues. Discrimination in Israel do exist. Issues related to land and the planning and housing and so forth still not solved, but there is no other way but to go together.
Yeah, I want to come back to that, Rita. I want to let you answer that same question about the evolution and where you think it's going. But I imagine that some of the work of the Abraham Initiative is to sort of combat some of that racism. So I'd like to hear, I want to give you an opportunity, but when we circle back to the next question, to think about what is there to be done about some, as you said, some of the goals of certain parts of Israeli society to upend this relationship. But I'm also want to hear more about the sort of discrimination and ways in which Israeli society can overcome that. So, but Rita, let me give you that same opportunity to talk through, from your perspective, some of these issues of a shared society and where you think it might be going.
Well, I think that, if I look at Israeli politics nowadays, it has been always a politics of identity. You have a lot of different political parties. You have political parties for Arabs, for Ashkenaz ultra-Orthodox, for Mizrahi ultra-Orthodox, for Russians, and so forth and so forth. And I think that it's okay, because I think that all of us are we are a creation of this politics of identity, and all of us have different identities, okay? But I think that if you want to move forward and to combat racism and discrimination and to build something that would combine citizenship, then it's not enough. I don't think that we should eliminate or weaken politics of identity, but we need to start thinking about building a second floor of politics, in which the second floor would be, the content of it would have good answer to difficult questions. For example, when I ask myself, or our community, our society, what does it mean to be an Israeli that goes beyond what we feel now? And we feel this duality, okay? Because we are citizens of the state of Israel, but we feel like we're not complete, okay? But when I ask also Jewish Israelis, what does it mean to be an Israeli that goes beyond being a Jew? I don't think that Jews also have good answer. So I think that civil society, NGOs, think tanks can help us create the platforms and the processes and the content in order for us to start working on these questions.
It's a great lead-in, Amnon, to you and the work of the Abraham Initiatives when we think about this unique political and socioeconomic moment. How has this shaped the work of the Abraham Initiative? So I sort of put this to you and to Thabet. The initiatives, the work, the partnership, how are you working with this new government? And where are you prioritizing your work? And I'll put that to the two of you.
So basically, the Abraham Initiative is a policy organization. We are trying to design policies for a shared society and to get the Israeli government to adopt it and implement it, our policy recommendations. And our operational philosophy is based on an assumption that instead of only talking to the government or writing or research, it's sometimes better to demonstrate your actual ideas on the ground through projects and then measure them, evaluate them, and if they prove to be successful, the government will be more receptive for adoption, to adopt them and to scale them and implement them and budget them and so forth. And in this way, we have been thinking and developing and incubating many programs that now it is much easier to present them to the government. There is, in the government, within government, there is more will. First of all, recognition of the importance of the issue, and much more readiness to listen and to give those ideas a real try. So we are working with the Ministry of Education, the Ministry of Public Security, the Ministry of Welfare, and other ministries who really, open the doors for us and our ideas. And in this way, the situation is much, much better than it used to be. Let's hope that it will stay this way. I do believe that no matter what, we are not going back, even if this government will change, and even if Likud and center and right of center government will be in place, I believe that everyone in Israel understands how important is the issue of creating a shared society, and hopefully our ideas will be meaningful and valuable in any political future.
So can you, either one of you, give us a couple examples of some of the initiatives?
Yeah, sure. I believe that our projects rely on two major pillars, equality and integration. I believe that when we talk about equality, it's very important for us is to see Arabs are really getting the same services that the Jewish citizens are receiving. The issue of equal and fair policing, for example, it's a major project in our NGO actually, and we are working with the Ministry of Internal Security to try to promote first of all, cooperation between the Arab community and the police. And when we talk about the challenge of seeing so many people really killed each year, crime and violence, organized crime within the Arab community, as I mentioned earlier, happy that the government really adopted a huge, and for the first time, a 5 years plan to combat crime and violence. And I'm happy that the Prime Initiatives really feeded the Prime Minister office with a lot of material, and we are working cooperation with all levels, Prime Minister office with the Ministry of Internal Security. This one I can go and elaborate. We don't have much time, but the other thing that integration, what's going on in the mixed city needs to pay to it special attention. You probably remember what happened last May events, and actually we kind of predicted what will happen in the mixed cities, and we must pay attention and invest in the mixed cities, bring Jews and Arabs to work together to regulate relationship between Arabs and Jews, to encourage counselors, Jewish and Arab counselors in the mixed cities to work together for all residents of the mixed cities. And we have a forum of counselors that really promote such a policy. We are in touch with all mayors. Add to that, one thing, another project really connected to the mixed cities, shared learning, for example, bringing kids from both communities, okay, to study together, okay, for example, English. We picked a neutral subject, bringing Arab kids to Jewish school and to study together. Two teachers, Arab and Jewish teachers, will teach English and then rotate. 2 weeks later, we will take the Jewish students to Arab school, sometimes not only the mixed cities, having in mixed regions, other places. And this way we are bringing people together and think that it can be happen, yes, to meet and talk and to study together.
So Thabet, you mentioned education, and I brought that up at the beginning. I think people are often surprised when we travel to Israel and we'll visit some schools and people will learn that the overwhelming majority of Arab and Jewish students in Israel attend different schools. With Arabs studying in Arabic, the Jews are studying Hebrew. It would seem to me that in addition to the policing and the integration, that the role of education could and should play a significant role in a shared society. In other words, maybe this is, the messianic, I don't know, messianic talk, but like, what would it look like if in the schools that Jewish students and Arab students were actually mixing then and beginning to build that shared society? Is that part of any conversation going on in Israel?
Well, in Israel we don't have one public educational system. We have 4 public educational systems that are really separate. We have one for what is called the secular Jewish kids. Yeah, they're all public. They're all under the ministry. We have one for the religious Jewish Zionist educational system. We have for the ultra-Orthodox, and we have for the Arab schools. And these separate systems are funded separately, managed separately. The content is fed separately, and I agree with you that this is a huge part of the racism and discrimination and the pushback against shared society. but I'm realistic enough to say that I don't anticipate that in the coming future we will see a major shift in that.
I agree that this is one of the main sources for anxiety, animosity, and really hatred sometimes even between the groups, the segregated or separated education systems. And I also agree that we're not going to see in the near future one system, one public school system where everyone goes, attend the same schools. But this is exactly why the Abraham Initiatives introduced this new idea of shared learning, and we actually imported this idea from Northern Ireland, where they have also two separated education systems. And as Thabet mentioned, the core idea is that two adjacent schools, Jewish and Arab schools, will choose one subject in which they will teach together, the kids together, and every other week the kids will study in the other school. And we are giving this idea a try. We're experimenting this idea in 40 Jewish and Arab schools in mixed places, in mixed cities, in the city of Akko mainly, and the regional mixed council of Gilboa. And the hope is that the ministry will soon adopt this idea and scale it throughout Israel. So in all of Israel's mixed cities, Jewish and Arab kids, they will not attend the same schools, but at least once a week they will meet and study together one subject. So this is, it's maybe not halfway, but quarter of a way for an integrated schooling system.
So that's happening currently in some pilot cities.
Exactly.
What's the response to that?
So right now the response is very positive. The Minister of Education, Dr. Ifat Shasha Biton, just commissioned a committee within the ministry to recommend to her a number of projects about education for coexistence or education for shared society that could be scaled. And this project is one of the leading projects. And we're very hopeful that it will soon be adopted. And as I said, implemented in all of Israel's mixed cities and regions.
Thank you. That's really interesting, and thanks for sharing that. Reid, I have one more question, and then we'll maybe open up if there are some people here who might have a question, and I've got a few more also. But you are actually in a position to shape these issues as a member of Knesset. Can you tell us more? Just a little more detail about your experience being an Arab woman in the Knesset, representing the Meretz party during this first time of this coalition.
Well, earlier I described it, being part of the coalition and focused more on the stronger or the positive elements of it, and there are a lot of strong and positive elements, but there are also a lot of difficulties and challenges working inside this coalition. First of all, you can see that in a lot of issues, they're like in this coalition, they're like statuses. There's this entitled politicians. Like, for example, Gantz, who, whenever he demands billions of dollars to be budgeted for something that he wants to promote, he demands and he gets. Where when Mansour Abbas, he's part of the coalition also, demands billions of shekels to be promoted to something that he wants, for as example, the economic development for the Arab community in Israel, he blackmailed the government, and he's pushing. So you can see that there are no real equality inside the coalition yet. On the other hand, I think that this coalition educates all of us as partners in this coalition to understand that although we need each other, but also that every one of us and every vote, because it's a minority coalition. You know, we're 61 out of 120. So each one of us really matters on every voting. And in that sense, whenever, you know, I mentioned earlier people from the Bennett political party and other politicians that I get to you know, to understand their perspective. I don't agree with them, of course, but politically speaking. But on the other hand, when I, as part of the coalition, I have to vote sometimes with the coalition against my own beliefs. And on the other hand, he or she sometimes also vote against their own beliefs. I get the shaming and the attacks from my home, and they also get the shaming and the attacks from their home. And in that sense, we understand that we are part of a bigger picture. Now, you mentioned being an Arab woman as a politician. Being in general, I think in the world and in Israel, and also maybe here, I'm sure, being a female politician is not easy. Because, being a politician, if you are a male, if you're a man, then, okay, you get attacked on the issues. But a lot of times, when you are a female politician, you get attacked on the character, and your character. And you get to be painted in some colors. And that's tough. And you have to be very, very confident in yourself and, the family and the house and the kids. So that's really tough. On the other hand, you can see that there are a lot of, we have this group of female politicians within the coalition, Arabs and Jews, across the board. And we talk a lot together, and we, sometimes when a male politician says something that is really, really insulting, then we all get together and we say, no, you can't do that. And this is something that is really, it's nice to have.
You used a great word. I mean, it was sort of a throwaway, but you said something that there's not, I forget exactly the phrase you used, and then you said yet. Right? Which is a great statement of faith in the future. Why don't we open it up for a couple minutes for some questions. I'm just going to remind the people in the space here that questions by definition require a question. We're not looking for political statements in these questions. We're looking for something that will end with a question mark at the end of it, okay? So let's keep that in mind as we engage with our panel respectfully. Okay, Chuck, go ahead, right there.
Yes. Oh, thank you. I don't mean to throw rain on the parade, but I just read the other day this pollster, Khalil Shakiki, who's a respected pollster in the West Bank and Gaza. And his last poll within the last 3 weeks, 4 numbers, 58% are against the two-state solution, 52% want to go back to intifada now, armaments, 73% believe the Quran's prophecy of the demise of Israel, and only 13%, that you seem to represent, want a political equality and political environment. If you people only represent 13%, it seems like you have a tough road to hoe, so to speak.
Well, I think but I think that these polls are for Palestinians within
Stalin can refer to that. First of all, Khalil Shikaki is conducting surveys among Palestinians in the West Bank and Gaza Strip. We are operating within Israel. We are dealing with building shared society and shared future for Jews and Arab citizens of the state of Israel. I mentioned the 1967 border. But since you already brought this issue, the issue of peace between Palestinians and Israelis always will be there. It's the elephant in the room that what happened in the territories, occupied territories, always will affect our relationship, will affect Arab citizens of Israel. After all, in our identity, we are Palestinians, and at the same time we are Israelis, okay? We are not Jews, yet we are Israeli citizens. So there is implication of what's happened. Now, what we need really to give a hope for the Palestinians, okay? I agree with you with this kind of deterioration in terms of supporting two-state solution, okay? It's not about Israel itself only and the occupation. It's also about freedom of speech within the territories, and I blame, first of all, the Palestinian Authority in that. I think the Palestinian Authority is not doing enough. It's not providing service. There is mistrust now of the Palestinian Authority by the Palestinian people. So there is no hope, there is no horizon for peace, and this is why people got frustrated. The siege in Gaza and the socioeconomic status of the Gazans, okay? So all these things bring such a very dark picture from the territories.
Did you want to add anything to that, right?
No, I
Great. We'll go back to you, and then in the front, and then we'll go back.
Thanks. Thabet, you used two really strong words in your original conversation. One was racism, and the other was crime. And I'm looking for some education, right? So could you talk a little bit more about what those mean? And could you talk a little bit, when you were talking about legislation, about things, whether it's education, social policy, that might be working to address those things, to see how those things come together? I'm just curious to get a little deeper into understanding what those mean and what the depth of that is.
Education and racism, right?
Crime, policing.
Yeah. Well, it's the major challenge that's facing the Arab community now in Israel, with the killing that continues and have been taking place within the Arab community. And only just now, within the current government, we see some changes that are taking place, and with a lot of investment. I feel that the police is doing a better job now in the last 6 months, and we see less shooting within the Arab community. We see also the presence of the police, and the police is doing better job, no doubt about it. But still, we have to see the results of this process. And I'm not saying that this is only the responsibility of the police. I believe that the government of Israel that allocated so much money to deal with the deep causes of the crime and violence, solving issues related to for example, housing, planning, and land issues related to financial services, bank services, and so forth. Those are major causes for the crime and violence. Issue of the young people. 30% of the Arab young kids, I see young people in the age of 18 to 22, neither working nor studying. So all of this together, adding to that, I think that the Arab community should take responsibility, more responsibility, should be engaged in solving certain conflicts, internal conflicts, tribal conflicts even, that really, without the cooperation between the police and the Arab community leadership, especially local leaders, it's not going to happen. So more responsibility from the Arab community, more engagement, more work by the police, and more investment from the government, implementing the decision that took by the government. This will make the work. Besides that, no doubt that education, that really the government allocated almost 1/3 of the big amount of 30 billion shekels actually for education, informal education, and other issues. So it's it's a combination of three factors: government, Arab community, and the police. And the subject of education is there in every realm, every activity that the government should do.
Yeah, hold on.
Just something about the background. So the background is that there is a surging wave of violence and crime within the Arab community that is on the rise for the past at least 7-8 years, sorry. And one of the reasons is the fact that there is lack of policing services and enforcement services, and this is because of the fact that the Israeli police has been acting as a security force towards the Arab citizens. The police did not see its role to serve and protect the Arab community, but more to protect Jews from the Arabs. That was the perception within the Israeli police. And the mirror picture of that was that the Arab community was very reluctant to collaborate with the Israeli police. So there was no policing. And when there's no policing, there's chaos, and there isn't any law and any order, and people started to killing each other over small issues. And too late, but nevertheless, the government realized that something has to change fundamentally. And right now they are, as Thabet said, investing a lot more in nurturing trust between the police and the Arab community, and really gradually changing the culture of the police so it really become a service also to the Arab citizens. So this is just to give you the background.
I want to add regarding legislations, because you asked about it. Regarding crime and violence, for the last at least 10 years, and I'm sorry to say that, the former prime minister in Israel had consistently neglected the Arab community, the Arab society in Israel, regarding the issue of policing, crime, and violence, in a way that we went into a situation nowadays that almost in every second household in our society, there is a legal weapon. And this is, the easy access to a legal weapon for kids that are 13, 14, 15 years old, to buy guns and to use guns and to be part of crime families, it's terrifying. And in that sense, I'm really happy that this coalition, I'm a member of the Committee of the Treasury in the Knesset, and it's responsible, this committee is responsible over the state budget. And one of the major components of the chapters within policing and crime fighting was issuing more than $1 billion over the next 5 years for investing in making our towns and villages safe. Something that is supposed to be a non-issue, and it was a real issue. And I'm really happy that we issued this legislation.
Thank you all. Amnon, I'm just curious. Thabet, you're somewhat optimistic in the last, I think you said 7 or 8 months, of moving in a better direction. Do you see that as well from your perspective, Amnon, that the government is moving in a better direction towards crime and education?
So in the specific field of combating crime and violence, the answer is yes. But I strongly believe that eventually the way for achieving a truly shared society in Israel go through the end of the occupation. I think that this is this is a fundamental ingredient in a safe and prosperous future for the state of Israel. And I do believe that even if Israel will invest a lot of money in trying to erode or to minimize the gaps, socioeconomic gaps between Jews and Arabs, it will be a lot, but not enough. Eventually, Israeli Palestinians or Israeli Arab citizens will really be able to integrate into Israeli society once their national aspirations will be realized by the creation of a Palestinian state, living peacefully alongside Israel. So, and there is no way around it. That's, if we want to be honest with ourselves, there is no way around it. So I'm hopeful that eventually we will reach there. And in the meantime, we're making small steps in narrowing gaps within Israel.
So we'll need another hour to address those issues, all right? But I know you had a question in the front row here, and then we'll start to wrap up.
That is a hard statement to follow because my question comes back to within Israel. It's so good to see you guys, by the way. I wanted to ask about the shared society field because we talked about breakthroughs in politics with an Arab party and Arab MKs in the coalition. We talked about the tense time that we're in right now and shared society as a concept. Can you talk a little bit about the shared society as a field and how it's, what is happening on the ground today in this tense time to try to keep Jewish-Arab relations moving forward despite the rising escalations? And I think a parallel, building on talking about the budgets, you've talked about how the government has been investing for closing socioeconomic gaps. In my perspective, that's created a certain mainstreaming and understanding that socioeconomic gaps are a problem, they need to be closed. Is there a parallel, is there a growing understanding within Israel that shared society and closing social gaps, is that gaining ground? So two questions about the field of shared society and the perception receptivity to shared society.
Wow. Is it directed at me? No. So
You're the experts.
go ahead.
Well, no doubt that to invest in shared society in toxic conditions, it's really tough. We just passed through very difficult times the last 2 weeks. I think the traumatic events, that terrorist attacks that took place, that really, it was a wake-up call for us, that to look around us to see if we are healthy enough, if we live in a healthy society or not. I think we are facing a lot of challenges to build a shared society. Everybody should look, we should look to the Arab community and try to make hishbon nefesh, to try to understand what happened, despite the fact that I believe that it's very individual cases what happened. And also the Jewish community should make such hishbon nefesh also, because we see that the whole Jewish society is going to the right, more and more to the right. The Shared Society Organization Israel, well-known, very active on the ground. There are a lot of projects taking place. Unfortunately, those projects are not exposed enough to the media. But I'm really, again, optimistic just because I know how many more Jews every day I hear would like to learn the Arabic language, for example. Okay? They're really interested in the Arabic language. I see the mobilization of the Arab community. They are everywhere, in every single Jewish cities. Okay? We are not talking about the mixed cities. Arabs are living in Kfar Saba and Ramat Sharon and Rishon LeZion, Jewish cities. Okay? So we need more projects, and we cannot rely only on the NGOs. We need the government to adopt a policy of building a shared society. Yes, still there are certain challenges, the occupation and certain days and occasions. Right now, there is tensions in Jerusalem, the issue of Jerusalem, Sheikh Jarrah, and what's going on there. But what we need really the government to adapt, and I'm happy that right now we have a new government with the new challenges, more challenges even, the issue of racism that I mentioned, that really it's an obstacle for building a shared society and shared future for Jews and Arab. But we are trying the most. Hopefully we'll convince the government, and Amnon just mentioned earlier, the projects that maybe will now be adopted by the new Minister of Education and to go further in this kivun, this direction.
May I add, I think that the forces for shared society in Israel are stronger than before, much stronger than before. We have a whole community. We have and we built our capacities and our answers and our rhetoric and clear explanation regarding the importance of what we are trying to promote. We have our representatives at the Knesset, like Ghaida. We have our people in government and in the administration and in the field and in the media and everywhere. So we are gearing up towards I don't want to, it sound in historic terms. We're talking about a battle between those who understand that there is simply no other way but finding ways to peacefully live together in a prosperous society, and those who are against that. They don't have a good alternative. All they know is that if they can play on the sentiments of fear and mobilize people against each other, somehow it will become so bad that for them it will bring something good. We don't know what's their game, what's their plan. But we are giving it a good fight, and hopefully we will win this fight.
Thank you for that optimism. And I think for many of us who don't know as much as we should about the work of the Abraham Initiatives, I think it's a really important message for our community here. I want to end on a little bit of a fun note. Ghaida, you're moving to Shanghai, right?
Yes.
Tell us, an amazing appointment, and as I said before, Mazal Tov.
Thank you.
What are you most excited about living in Shanghai?
Wow. I will answer, seriously and then get to the funny part of my question. Yeah. I think that one of the most important things for me in this step is to have a message for younger Arab women, not to be afraid of taking real, challenging decisions. For me to be, a diplomat, this is something that, I'm the first one to be in this position. And this is important for me. On the lighter part of my answer, I think that, I don't know why, but I decided 3 or 4 months ago to start studying French. And now I have to start studying Mandarin, so I'm not sure how to.
Is that the fun part?
Yes.
It's a hard language,
Yeah.
Well, I want to thank all of you for joining us here, and as I said, for teaching us and exposing us to the sacred work that you do to creating a home that we can live in together. So continued success in that sacred work. Before we conclude, I just want to let you know about an upcoming program. April what, Mara? What? April 11th. I'm sorry, I didn't write that part down. April 11th at 12:30, Broken Remembrance Day, Israeli soldiers working through PTSD. So, Kareem, we look forward to that, and thank you for bringing that to us. For those of us who are here in person, I want to thank you for joining us. For those of us who are watching through the live stream, thank you for being a part of this important conversation, and we'll see you soon.